Malolele, and welcome everyone to another live digital kava session here on the Polynesianized podcast, coming from Southern Nevada, the Silver State, the entertainment capital of the world. This is Tuafale. We also have Mr. Aotearoa joining us from New Zealand. How's it going in
Yes,
your neck of
sir.
the woods, Masi?
Beautiful Sabbath day here in New Zealand in Aotearoa, South Auckland, Manurewa. As you can see, I just finished church not too long ago, and then kind of did some prepping and stuff. So I'm in my church outfit, my best look church outfit
Still looking good.
today.
Still looking good.
So hopefully I don't spill too much kava on the white shirt. Hey, do so, but it's good to be
Yeah.
here, Marlo.
Yeah, as we mentioned last night in our live digital kava session, we're having two live digital kava sessions in a row, which is a little bit unusual,
Yeah,
but a lot of it is because we're pretty excited to have a guest join us today. He's joining us. We've reacted to some of his content online. He's shared a lot of insight and just good energy in my perspective. So we're really excited to have this guest join us, and we're going to bring him on stage real quick, just so that our viewers are familiar with. Mr. Aotearoa is going to give a welcoming to our guest, and then kind of let him introduce himself. But we're going to add him to the stage right now. So we're going to add Mr. Sonny Natanielu. So we'll bring him into the stage here real quick. And the areas that I'm definitely tracking with you on, Sonny, is I'm a believer we were structured as a people. It's just, to me, that's, in my mind, it's almost undeniable, right? That's pretty undeniable as one people, as a group. So I think we're tracking there, and there seemed to be some level of structured government there. Um, my question is on, because we do agree, Savai'i, that's a very important term,
Yeah,
right? And it's very obvious because it's found
yeah.
throughout Polynesia, everywhere throughout Polynesia. My question is, in your experience, where does that name come from? We take the position that Vaihi, in Tonga, some of the oral history, and kind of we take the same position you take, Sunny, which is why I think it's fair for you to say you heavily value the tufunga. Totally respect that,
Yeah.
because they at least have some weight, some tradition, and the fact that they're relatively consistent, I can respect that. In the oral histories that we have exposure to, because of the blood that's in our veins, the most consistent um, name that comes up on our origin is Vaihi.
Mhm.
They say we come from Vaihi. And what we understand from that is Vaihi is our origin, and our oral history kind of represents, it's a place. It could be a people, right?
Yeah,
Because people come from places,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
People don't come from nowhere. So to me, whether it's a place or a people, I think we're tracking in the same thing. What is any oral history that you've come across in? Where does the term Savai'i come from? Where does that
mm,
name come from in your perspective
mm,
or history you've heard?
Yeah. So I have nothing on that.
Okay.
You know, my guess is, I agree with you. People come from a place, but also a place is reflective of the people. And
Yeah, it's
so,
interconnected. It's the same
yeah,
thing, right?
and
Yeah.
so, yeah, so I'm not sure what Vai'i or Vaihi or Savai'i. I'm not sure the origins of that in
Mm.
terms of who named it or whether is it us or any. Yeah, I can. I haven't thought about it because I'm still trying to figure out this part of
Yeah.
it, and then once I figured out that part of it, if there was such a thing as the migration circuit and all of that, then the question for me will be, then where did that migration circle start from, and or where did it start, and then where did it come from? Where
Mhm.
was that place? So yeah, I haven't reached that far back yet because I'm still trying to connect the dots this way.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate it. I mean, just we'll throw our that little idea, and you
yeah,
can
yeah.
ask any
Go for
questions
it.
you want. But the oral history that we have access to says that the first Tongans come from Vaihi, and that Vaihi is the far away land.
Is
right?
that the definition of it?
Yeah.
It's the definition of where it is, right? It's the far
Ah.
away land. And we take a very, and like you said, this is a lot of people kind of laugh at us for this idea. They even mock us for it. But hey, I'm grounded and I feel very comfortable. I don't mind if people mock my position. I don't blame them. Is it a little far-fetched, like you said? Maybe, but I also feel very comfortable with it, right? And the position that we share is Hikuleo, which in the oral traditions where we come from is the god that brought our ancestors to Tonga. And Hikuleo is literally translated the tail of the voice, meaning that this god led who we call in our oral history, and we coined this term, it is the founding fathers of Tonga and Polynesia, and that's Tangaloa, Maui, and Tataula or Loau, and specifically led them to Tonga from Vaihi, and they were led there. So it wasn't led there by blowing of the wind or by accident. They were specifically led to a location. And the reason why Vaihi is so important to ancient Tongan history is everywhere our ancestors went, they always named the place Vaihi. It was always to remember where we came from. Savaii, Hawaii, even in, like you mentioned in Aotearoa, like this name obviously was important to our ancestors because they took it and they named it throughout Polynesia. So we make the claim, as silly as it sounds, that Hikuleo led our ancestors here. Maybe people can rightfully say it's because of our religious background from being LDS. Hey, if it is, it is. But I still prescribe to it is that was the God of Israel who led our people to the islands. Like, to me, you can say it's coincidence or you can say it's by design. Why was Polynesia the last place to be populated and the last place to be revealed to mankind? You can sit back and say, oh yeah, that's coincidence, or you can say there's a reason behind it, right? Like the Tatau. You can just say, oh, our people just liked the designs, they wanted to look cool. Well, that's one explanation. Or you can say, no, it's a spiritual connection. It's a spiritual experience. It's astronomical knowledge. You can choose to interpret it however you wish to interpret it. And that's the beauty of coming and having these conversations, is everyone can listen to everyone and then say, yeah, I agree, or I disagree, right? But that's kind of the position we take here. And
can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you? So when you talk about Vaihi as a faraway place, the place of origin, do you have any stories around whether it's east or west?
Yes. So, and this is a lot obviously based off of our father's work, and it's primarily coming from the Americas. So coming from the east, right? And Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, was a very, very critical island for the navigation of going back and forth, because Rapa Nui had certain names like the little coconut or the last coconut. Yeah. In our Tongan history, it was your last stop, and you had to stop there. It was the entry point from Vaihi coming to the Pacific, and it was the entry point from Pacific going into Vaihi. And so a lot of the stuff that we kind of, and I guess we get criticized this. Let me go back to this real quick because I don't want to forget. We're getting a lot of activity online, but we're trying to stick to our promises. We want to say thank you to Venu. Thank you for the kava bag. Greatly appreciated.
Mel.
Please, Mel, if you have a comment or a question, we appreciate the kava bag being tossed in here to the circle. But also, if you have something you want to share or ask Sonny or the live here, please throw it in there or just make a comment and we'll highlight it for you. Sorry, just wanted to kind of stop there real quick. So the big thing, Sonny, that our if you want to call it our philosophy or ideology, is we we follow the ideas and the culture behind it, and we say that is a better, in our opinion, a better way to find origin, because genetic material sometimes is a little more challenging. And I like to use the idea of the United States. You could come to the United States and you would find Chinese DNA, you'll find European DNA, but does that fully explain the idea of America? No, it's not sufficient. You could come to America and find that 80% of our product as it stands right now is made in China. Does that mean that America came from China? No, it shows there's a connection. It shows there's a relationship, but it doesn't fully explain the ideology of that group. And that's where we kind of heavily lean towards, is the ideology of our people. And sorry, Mel said she made a comment and I can't find it.
It's in the beginning. It's in the beginning.
Oh.
So I think
Oh,
Burry
here we go. I found it. Yeah. Sorry. We're trying to multi-purpose here. So Mel says everything changed in 1000 and 1250. Everyone dispersed into their own journey of beginning. I really agree with that. This is, in my perspective, Mel, what happened is whenever you have a social breakdown, then there's migrations, right? Where people are like, I'm unhappy. Maybe there's social, political unrest. And people are saying, whether it's resources, social, political, economic, when there's a breakdown, people start dispersing. So I don't disagree with that 100%, Mel. So thank you, Masi, for helping me find that, because I was like, Mel,
no
I see that you shared, but I'm not finding it. So before we go too far as well, we want to recognize Nas. Thank you for the kava bag, Nas.
Malo Maukava.
Malo and Maukava. I appreciate it. Thank you for dropping. If you have another comment, hopefully I didn't miss it, Nas. But trying to multitask here as much as possible. But I appreciate it. So I'll try and condense this. And people can visit thfale.com, thfale.com. That's where a lot of these ideas, Tevita Fale has that website. But really what it comes down to, and I'll be as short as possible here, Sonny, is the mound building, the astronomical knowledge, the Tui system or the kingly system. These are all markers of a civilization that we say, where can we find those same markers from around the world? And Tevita Fale makes the argument, when you find mound building, you find it throughout Polynesia, because that was the primary civilization structure. And in Tonga, you hear it a lot. They say, "Folai fala kai talanoa," where you lay out the mat and then we bring the kava and we have the conversations. What Tevita Fale says is, yes, that is correct, but you have to back up a little bit. The correct way, the full way, it's not the correct way, it's the more complete way, is build the mound, build the fale, then you can lay the mat and have the kava. But if you don't have the mound and you don't have the fale, then you don't have the infrastructure or the stability in society to lay out a fala and have a conversation. Because until you have an organized and a stable society, you cannot have conversations. You end up just warring with each other, because there is no mound, there is no fale to which you can lay out the fala and have the kava, to have the conversations. And so that's really the driver behind that philosophy that Tevita Fale has. Before I open it up for Sonny and Masi, we're going to highlight Nas's. He says, Hipu Fonukiai. So Nas says, give me a full cup.
Full cup.
Full cup.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Nas, we send you a digital full cup of kava. Mahalo, Pito, thank you for the contribution, Nas.
I think Mel Venu put up his question. I think he wanted us to kind of touch that Lua Hatu or Lua Fatu is home of Te Hui. That one. So that's
okay.
That's,
I'll read this out and I'll open it up for, I'm not very familiar with this, but anybody here who might have some knowledge. But Mel Venu says Lua Hatu or Lua Fatu is home of Te Hui Atafu in Tonga. Not very familiar. Sonny, have any knowledge of this or anything to kind of contribute to this? Mel, if there's anything, if there's a
Add more
link,
context. Yeah.
yeah, if there's a link online that you can share, maybe we can pull it up and take a look at it. But if you could give more information, that would be great.
Mm.
So okay, but yeah, that's the crash course on it. That's kind of our position. Masi, anything to add to that, or Sonny, any comments there?
No, I'll just add to kind of what Tua was sharing, and then Sunday you can go ahead and share your thoughts. Another big reasons we kind of do follow is by he being an indicator of our origins. We do believe that we probably, like we said, we were sailor. You know, we sailed around the Pacific Ocean. There's there could be ties that we went and got more women or people from east, west, the west side, up to the Philippines. Who know that Taiwan, that side, and kind of help to populate these Polynesian islands. And another indicator, I'm a big believer in our oral history, but it makes it very clear when you have ruins. Um, Tonga has the Sun Gate, which is the Ha'amonga, which is known throughout Polynesia, and the only place that has a Sun Gate other than in Tongatapu is in it's in the Americas. There's a Sun Gate in Bolivia, which is built the same way, and its purpose was astronomical knowledge of knowing the sun gates, and it helps. So that's kind of that's what helps us, just to kind of give you an understanding of what helps us to come to our conclusion. And Tevita Fale is the one that's kind of discovered, and we're just kind of falling in that idea. But to me, it's very hard to, when you have oral history and then you have ruins, it's very difficult to kind of dispute that. So that's kind of where we kind of come to our conclusion there. But just to add on to what Tua shared earlier, I don't know if you had any thoughts, or I don't know, want to start another question, or any curious ideas. I don't know, Sunny, but
No, I mean you've raised some brought in some stuff that I've not heard before, and even with was it Mal's comment there about lua fatu, lua hatu, so I'm making some notes of, for me to follow up on all these things, like I said, I haven't made that connection, further back, because I'm still trying to make those connections, in the more recent 3,000 to 5,000 years. And so yeah, I'm making a note of all these things so I can, now I've got names to follow up on. So yeah, thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it. And that's actually, it's funny, Sonny, this is one of my favorite things about doing the podcast is I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and it's exciting to learn and have these. This is why sitting with you and having these conversations, listening even to our viewers are very knowledgeable. They're sharing stuff with us that we've been blown away by. They've said, hey, Tua and Masi, can you guys look into this? And we go look into it, and it's like, never heard of this before. So that's the goal here. It's to bring people, have conversations, and see where we go from there. Another quick question from my end, and Masi, if you have a question, please throw it in. Kind of give from your perspective the relationship between Tonga and Samoa, and what you've heard. I know you shared on one of the videos that we reacted to. You've spent some time in Tonga. You spoke with the Majesty, His Majesty's historian. Just help us understand what your perspective of what's the relationship of Samoa and Tonga, and anything you've heard that you say, hey, might be interesting, just to kind of throw it out there on the table.
Yeah, so just for those that unaware of the reference you just made there, so the church group that I was with at the time, this is in the early 90s, we did some work in the youth area in 90, 95, 96, and we went as guests of Princess Siuilikutapu. And so she, because of her involvement with what we're doing, we had an audience with the king, and the monarchy at that time was Taufa'ahau IV. And so we got to meet the king, and we got to have a very short conversation with him, and his historian. And so we were asked the question, what do we know about the connection between Tonga and Samoa? And me being the Fiapoko, I said, all I know is that Samoa used to rule over Tonga for a few hundred years up until the rebellion.
Mm.
And in Samoa, we would recognize that rebellion as the beginnings of the Malia Toa title. And so then the king said that's not the story of Tonga and Samoa is not one people ruling over another people. The story of Tonga and Samoa is one people divided by class, a ruling class and a working class. And after a few generations of cruel leaders or dictators, so this is the
Talakai
Tuikana
Paiki. Yeah.
the working class became a slave class. And history teaches us the thing that always follows slavery is rebellion, because nobody wants to be a slave. And then in Samoa, we know this as the Tuna and Fata rebellion. And then the rebellion was successful. And then the ruling class fled. Those in Sava'i, the ruling class that lived in Sava'i, so this is the Tuikana Kupolu, where when they left south. And so, as in Samoan tradition, the story we tell is that when the ruling class left, the Tuikana Kupolu shouted back to Sava'i, Malie toa wa malo tau, well done warriors, you fought a good fight. The next time we come, we do not come to war, but we come as brothers visiting brothers. And so the two brothers, Tuna and Fata, who started the rebellion, they then go, oh, Malia Toa, that's a cool name. I'll have it. And the other one says, no, I'll have it. So they fought over who was going to be the very first Malia Toa. So that was the beginning of the Malia Toa title. The ruling class, they went south. The islands they came to is south. And Tongatapu is directly south of Sava'i. And so the word for south in every Pacific language is Tonga. The ruling class that lived on Upolu, which weren't a lot, but they were based in Upolu, they went north. And the islands they came to is north of where they came from. And Tuvalu, in every Pacific, Tokelau, in every Pacific language, Tokelau means north. And in Samoa, we say To'elau. And so that's where you get Tonga, Tokelau, and then Sava'i in the middle. So this is what the king, Tawha'ahau Tupou IV, explained to us was the connection. And that's why, and you're saying to us, that's why whenever a Tongan wanted a tatau, they would go back home to get it done, because as far as they were concerned, that was still their home. And so you'll see, and you see it was usually the noble families that wanted the tatau, but they would voyage with a fleet back to Sava'i and get their tatau done. And so, then there's that debate of the Tongan tatau and the Tongan malu versus the Samoan tatau and the Samoan malu. Those are quite recent that we are now calling those names. But back in those days, there was no such distinction, that the Tongans, the so-called Tongans going back to Samoa to get it, was not they're getting a Samoan tatau. They're getting what was ancestrally, genealogically, historically theirs. We're just the ones that have kept the tradition, but it's also your history. And so this is what the king was explaining to us. And so he also explained a lot of villages and islands of Tonga have genealogical connections directly back to Sava'i. And the whole point of bringing Lawaki to be the king's orator was because of that genealogical connection. Anyway, so that was a story that I'd heard directly from the king and his historian. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah. I'm just trying to understand from your perspective what you understand as the relationship there, and kind of understanding there. We do want to jump real quick here. Malo Mel, very active. Appreciate another bag. I noticed some of your comments, Nell, are kind of spread throughout, and we're having a lot of comments online because, unfortunately, Mel, from where I'm looking, it combines all of the comments from Facebook, YouTube. So the thread I'm looking through combines all of it. So if you want to share a direct question, throw it in there. But if there's another one besides this one, Mel, and she says, Tokelau Tui Atafu is the name even with Ui Samoa creation story. Are you familiar with the Ui Samoa creation story, Sonny?
I'm not familiar with that one, but yes, I do. I now see Atafu from Tokelau. Yeah.
Okay. Anything you know about Atapu? Any kind of stories there,
Nah.
Sonny, that you've heard? Okay. But yeah, Mel, that's if there's more to that question that you want to add, I really appreciate your contributions here. So I want to make sure I try and give you as much as we can to answer your questions, or even just something you want to mention, Mel, for everyone to hear. Please throw that into a new comment, and I'll try and track it and make sure we throw that on the table.
And thank you for the connection of those stories too. I'm looking that up. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. She also mentions another name here, Tikopia Sika Ayana. Not familiar with that, Mel. Unfortunately, this is the cool thing, right? Is I appreciate you bringing these new ideas, Mel, but kind of give us some more understanding. Like I said, if there's a link to a story online or a video that you wanted us to kind of look at that talks about this, Mel, please throw the link in there, and we'll do our best to give something. And she's saying that the Tikopia Sakiana is in the Solomon Islands, which comes back to what you're saying, Sonny, that right, the Polynesian Triangle is just kind of a general marking, but there's obviously influences that go far beyond the triangle itself. So perfect. Any thing to add, Mr. Atearoa? Any questions?
Let me see here. No.
Okay.
I think everything's
I have
been
another one
going smooth.
then. I have another one then, Sonny, related to this. What kind of knowledge or history do you have with the Pulemelei mound? What kind of conversations have you heard? I know this has kind of led to some of those star mounds and the Sia Heulupe, because we'll give our perspective. Appreciate kind of the perspective you shared from Ha'amoa, but as we exchange stories here, this one is kind of tied to our perspective. What's kind of your position or anything you've heard with your peers and your groups of discussions on Pulemelei and the Sia Heulupe and where that derives from, and any kind of interesting things when you first heard about it?
I won't go too much into it, mainly because it was a thing of interest for me. My original PhD was going to be on that.
Okay.
The problem was when the village where Pulemelei is, when they wouldn't talk about it, when I was starting to ask some questions around the origins of it, they were reluctant to talk about it beyond a certain time period. And so to them, it's a pigeon hunting mound. But then there's all this evidence and all this historical evidence that some of the other Samoan historians, like the late Moelangi Jackson, would talk about. And the late Moelangi Jackson hosted, I've forgotten his name now, but he was a geologist, world-renowned geologist, who's from Australia, based himself in Savaii to look at Pulemelei. So had conversations with them. Then there's the Norwegian expedition archaeological digs around there. I've forgotten her name now. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around it that I got to look at, but the village wouldn't talk about it. And so it made me pause around talking too much about Pulemelei, because it's like I'm really critical of Western academics, anthropologists and historians come to Samoa, spend 6 months, or any part of the islands, spend 6 months there, write a PhD thesis, then they become known as the experts on us, even though they're only with us for 6 months. And and I found that really offensive that these foreigners would be considered experts on us, even though they were only with us for 6 months. And now here I am, as much as I want to know about Pulemelei, when the village won't talk about it, I'm reluctant to talk too much about it, because it's really a lot of it's to do with their ownership of Pulemelei.
Interesting.
But there are some, so I can't talk too much about some of the oral stories that I unpacked from them, because they won't talk about it. but I don't mind talking a little bit about what some of the literature says, and then a bit about, because I spent some time with the late Moilangi Jackson and the geologist that stayed with him. And so Pulemelei is just one of those places that, for those that don't know, Pulemelei is, in the eyes of people like me, is like a early prototype of a 4-step pyramid. It's exactly 12 meters high, 60 meters by 65 at the base, and it is almost identical to the 4-step pyramids you find in Peru and Chile. And according to the Norwegian archaeological digs, it's about 1,000 years older than the oldest ones you find in Peru and Chile. And so yeah, it's just, you can't see the 4 steps right now because of volcanic activity. You need a bit of creative license to see the images of it, but you can kind of make out 4 steps. But yeah, it's just one of these places. So I know the Dr. Peter Sharples, who's one of the Maori leaders here in Aotearoa, he stood on Pulemelei and he made the declaration, this is where Maori are from. And a few years after I read that, this is in the early 2000s, I actually met Dr. Peter Sharples at the Otara Free Market. And I asked him, and I said to him, there's this piece of literature written by Tuiatua that says that, you stood on Pulemelei and made this declaration, this is where Māori are from. And I asked Dr. Peter Sharples, do you stand by those comments, or was he just being presumptuous? And Dr. Peter Sharples looked at me and goes, no, I stand by those comments. I thought, wow. So I didn't get a chance to talk much more about him, but he makes the contention that so along the southern coast of Savaii is this fence structure called Pao Tonga, which is the Tongan Palisades. So the Australian geologist was saying it was what the Tongans put up when they were living there. And I said to him, no, that can't be right, because they were only called Tongans when they left Savaii. They weren't in charge of, they didn't rule over Samoa as Tongans. They were just the ruling class, according to what the king had said. And so he didn't like what he said, but he said to me that so I think Dr. Peter Sharples was saying that southern Palisade, the Pao Tonga, is what the pā sites here in Aotearoa are trying to imitate, where they put their pā sites around the mountain, imitates the Le Pao Tonga around, along the southern coast, centered around Pulemelei. So this is what Dr. Peter Sharples makes the connection to. The Australian geologist did say that one of the extraordinary things about that southern fence line is that when they extracted materials from it, there's a type of iron there that predates the arrival of the Europeans with their bronze and their iron. And so he said that, in Samoa, the word for spoon is sipungi. The word for plate is peleki. So we Samoanize these English words. But when we have our own word for those things, then we already had it. And so metal in Samoa is not metali or sitili, it's uamea. And I think in Tonga it's ukamea, which is metal.
Yeah.
So that means we had this ourselves before the Europeans brought their metal. And so this is what the geologist was telling me, was that the southern Palisade has got that metal right along it. And there's, coming back to Mormons, there's a piece of it in the Bishop Museum in Hawaii. So if you get a chance to go to the Bishop Museum, ask about a piece of the Pao Tonga. I still haven't had a chance to see it, so I'm dying to go and see it myself.
Interesting. I did not know that. I did not know that. That's very fascinating. Very fascinating.
Yeah. So Pulemelei, and then Tuiatua, while I was doing my PhD, I had a chance to talk with Tuiatua and his brother, Tuatangaloa, and they were saying to me that would have been now maybe about 20 years ago that they did a ceremony, a cleansing ceremony on top of Pulemelei. and they had representatives from 8 different islands around the Pacific: Tahiti, Rarotonga, Tonga, Niue. On top of that, on top of Pulemelei, and it was a dawn ceremony. And all of those representatives made the voyage because they believed that their stories of origin comes back to Pulemelei. Coming back to, I talked about the migration circuit. So that's one of the pieces to me that adds to that story, is that these different representatives from these different islands all made the connection back to Pulemelei. So, being Samoan, if a Samoan says, oh, the Samoa's the center, Samoa's the origin, yeah, I get it, But when other nations are saying this, but to me, the connection wasn't to Samoa. The connection is to Savaii. So this is where I make that the thought. Before we were called Samoans, the connection was to Savaii. Anyway, so those are some of the stories that I found out. Yeah.
No, that's very cool. I do want to look into it because in Tonga it is called ukamea as well. Yeah. And that's for steel. Clyde Moore, want to recognize Clyde Moore, Malo for the kava.
Clyde Moore.
Clyde Moore.
Man, you're really trying to get us really drunk on the kava. This is the second one.
I know. I think what Clyde Moore is saying is it's too watery. He wants to add more kava.
Add more.
Kava
We're adding too much water. Yeah. Malo, kava, Clyde Moore.
So Clyde Moore's comment says, no question. I just wanted to commend you three for sharing and questioning these ideas. This is a search for the truth, for the best that we know. Thanks for adding the links to the chains, Tokos. Malo, Pito, Clyde Moore. Appreciate it. No, that's very interesting. I never heard of the ukamea portion of it, and I would love to, that's making a mental note of that, to visit that. We've had some episodes where we've talked and walked through the Pulemelei. One of the things that we even had some, and maybe you were part of those, or some of the people you mentioned in those expeditions there, Sonny, but because Masi speaks Samoan, we were able to watch or respond to some of the interviews of the villagers in that area. And one of the things, and I wanted to see what your thoughts were, was there were 2 of the ladies from the village in that area that lived there, that there are 2 things. They brought up the Pa'atonga, right? And they said that in their village, their history, according to her, everybody has different. Let me say it by clarifying this. You can have a village and there's certain stories in that village, but then there's also, within certain families, there's stories within that family. So I'm not saying that this young lady or these 2 or 3 young ladies are representing the whole village, but they're from the village and at the very least represent their portion of their family who share this. Is they said they had always grown up and they were told it was the Pa'atonga, right? And and they never heard the term Pulemelei before. They never, and she said, I don't even know where that name comes from.
Yeah.
They said, so that's what my question is do you have any knowledge of where that name Pulemelei comes from? Because she seemed to say, it's like, we always called it Pa'atonga and that this was tied to the Tu'itonga's residence. That's what she said. She had always grown up, and she even references the gentleman who owned that land, or at least farmed on that land, that's what he shared as well. But where does the name Pulemelei come from?
Yeah, again, like Savaii, it's one of those things where once I get the stories around that, then I'll be asking the questions, where did that come from? I haven't looked into that yet. I've heard some people theorize and applied a type of etymology to it. I'm not sure if current etymological analyses
fits the past.
will make sense of these ancient practices, because not every ancient word can be broken down into bit words. But that's only my own fear, Poko. It could very well be the case, but I haven't looked enough into it to make any intelligent comment.
What are some of those ideas about the etymological origin of the word? Because I haven't heard, like, that's something I've never heard of anyone saying, well, this is a possible definition. But what is some of those ideas?
So I've heard some say Pule and Malay. So the Pule means authority.
Makes sense, yeah.
And Malay. So then they have nothing for Malay because there is no such word or person in our stories that we know of.
I see.
And then some say pu, horn or trumpet, le, and then they still get stuck on Malay. So those are a couple of things that I've heard.
I see.
So
I see.
the trumpet of, So again, I'm not sure. It could very well be, but I haven't looked into it to make anything.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay. Any real connection to it? I mean, that's something. Hey, maybe someone will find something or whatever, right? But that's more information looking to come.
Well, there is this. So I got to stand on Pulemelei before it got closed down to the public. This is when was this? 2009. Oh man, I tell you, when I stood on Pulemelei, there was just oh man, goosebumps. There was just something really spiritual about it. And I had an app on my phone at the time, and I just wanted to look at where am I standing. And the observation that I made is that the steps to go up, and then the other steps, that on the other side of it to go to the top. And I made the comment, those steps are an exact east-west alignment. And I just made that comment. Our tour guide, who was from the village, he said, yes, before all these trees grew up, you could see over the top, and it lined up with the pyramid mound in Manono. What? So, when you talk about pyramid mounds and astronomical connections, Pulemelei was not just a burial site, but there was there's a type of connection with the one in Manono, and I haven't looked at it yet, but I wanted to see, is there a connection? Is there something in Manua to get that east-west alignment? And so, I'm hoping to get to Manua at some stage to have a look. Is there a type of pyramid structure, mound in Manua, and does it line up with that Pulemelei and the one in Manua?
Astronomical alignment there.
Yeah.
No, that's very interesting.
So there seems there's voyaging connections to it, as well as a burial place.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's the first thing that, I find it very interesting that you shared that some of the observations these are very similar to the pyramids in Peru.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously for obvious reasons from our ideology, we would say, we would be open to that. And that would make sense. And this is something that Te Vita Fale draws on very heavily. And these astronomical alignments are not by chance, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that's really important is the understanding of the astronomy is actually very critical, and it's reflected. I wouldn't be surprised. What I'm trying to get to this is, Sonny, I wouldn't be surprised if there are other things that astronomically are tied. If we're saying that the Pulemelei mound is oriented in a way east to west, which means the rising and setting of the sun, that is also true of the Ha'amonga. So one would assume that there would be other astronomically aligned items. And Te Vita Fale makes a very, in my opinion, obviously biased, in my convincing argument that the Ha'amonga, and I know in the Samoan astronomy, they call it the Amonga too, that is a very, very significant constellation in the sky. And that is actually something that Te Vita Fale has recorded, that the Kava ceremony in Tonga is heavily based off that. There's the east-west, and the significance, at least from the Tongan perspective, is east-west is the movement of the sun, and that is directly tied to whoever is the leader. So the road of Tangaloa, who we take the position is the kingly line, the road of Tangaloa is east-west. It's the movement of the sun. So the fact that this structure is aligned from east to west could be a hint that this is the residence of the king. This is why even to Tonga to this day, when they speak poetically of the king, they speak about the sun. the son of Tonga, the son of Polynesia, because that is a representation. And so that's the road of Tangaloa, or the road of the king. The road of Maui is the Milky Way, and that's Maui's road. And so those are some of the things that when I hear about Pulemelei and I hear those things, 100% agreed. I think they're significant. We have our own perspective on it. There's oral history in Tonga, and we even looked at some of the studies. I guess there was a structure that was built on top of Pulemelei, and they looked at the post. There was a primary post, and they did the dating on that post. A lot of it is within, I want to say it was around the 1200 AD-ish of the age of that post. And obviously there's a lot of connections. That's why I brought up the Pulemelei and your kind of discussions on Samoa and Tonga's relationship is we agree. There wasn't a Samoa and a Tonga. There was what we refer to as a family. There was a family governance that led to the social structure and stability throughout Polynesia that kept us connected. Obviously, we lean towards the Tui Tonga, but I'm very interested to hear what made the gentleman. Did he share with you as to why he said this is where the Maoris come from? Is it what was kind of his driver? Was there any oral history or any type of knowledge or any type of kind of just information that he shared with you that said, this is why I believe this? I know you mentioned there's a structure in New Zealand that seems to match that, but was there anything else he shared as to why he was driven?
So he did offer to make himself available for an interview with me. The problem was he was a politician at the time, and he was always in Parliament. So I've been trying to find him and reach out to him to see if I can have that conversation with him, this many years later. But what I did find is, so my cousin, this is late 90s, early 2000s, my cousin, the one that set me up to get my tatau, he used to work for the government, and he called me one time and he said, what's Ngā Puhi doing up here in Samoa? They want to go to Savaii. I said, I don't know, what's going on? He said, there are these Ngā Puhi elders. So Ngā Puhi are the northern iwi of the north part of the North Island. And so he was saying that Ngā Puhi are there with some elders wanting to dig up some bones because they believe their waka came from Savaii, and so they wanted to make that connection. And I said, I didn't know anything about it. Anyway, I was catching up with a friend of mine, and he was with one of his best friends. And as I was telling this to this guy, his friend was saying to me, I can tell you something about it. I was with them, and I was there to do a documentary about Ngā Puhi being in Savaii. I said, oh, what is it? And he said, in the late 80s, early 90s, Ngā Puhi ran a whole series of hui amongst all the different sub-tribes that make up their tribe. And they found that when they collected all the stories, there's about half a dozen names of ancestors that they could only find in Savaii. And so they wanted to see why that was. They wanted to see who are these people that, they can only find those connections in Savaii. And so the friend was saying, when he did the documentary, so you can find this documentary, it aired in New Zealand in the early 2000s. And so I asked him, well, what was the conclusion? And he said, Ngā Puhi believe their elders came straight from, their waka came from Savaii to the North Island. And so the belief here in Aotearoa amongst Māori, when you die, your spirit goes to Cape Reinga. The original name is Te Rerenga, or Lelenga, the flight path, and it takes flight to the spirit realm. And in Savaii, the westernmost part of Savaii is Whalealupo, which is where I mentioned my mum, Ngafa Bektu. And the westernmost part of Whalealupo is a place called, now we call it Whawhao Sawari'i, or the Cave of Spirits. The traditional name of it is Pulotu. And so if you look at where Pulotu is, in comparison to Te Rerenga, it is directly north of that place. And so this is what Ngā Puhi made the connection, that they believe their waka came straight from Sava'i. And so one of the Ngā Puhi knowledge holders here, Rereata, he talks about these different stories that connects them. There's a story about Te Tini or Manono that talks about one of their ancestors who came from Manono, right beside Sava'i. And so they're the ones that made this connection that connects Sava'i directly to Ngā Puhi territory. So yeah, and apparently there's a documentary that makes a connection. So even though Dr. Peter Sharples didn't tell me that story, you know, he's the one that made me start to ask that question of different iwi about what do they make these connections, how do they make these connections. So like I said, you know, if it was a Samoan telling me this, I would think, oh yeah, maybe. But when this was told to me by Maori, by Ngā Puhi, and by the guy that made the documentary, I'm going, okay, I'm taking this as this actually happened.
Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, and these circuits happen, these conversations are, you know, migrations. I think we severely underestimate how fluid our ancestors travel.
Right. Yeah.
Right? I think it's not as rare as we think. What stuck out to me is when you said pulotu. What does pulotu mean to people in Samoa and oral history, or even in New Zealand? What's kind of the discussion there about pulotu? What is that? Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, so pulotu is the name of the spirit realm, you know, the entrance to the spirit realm. And whereas for us, it's the cave, it's the entrance, it's the cave to the entrance, it's the entrance to the cave, which is the entrance to the spirit realm. You know, so there's the guardian or the tui pulotu. And I know there's tui pulotu in Tonga, tui pulotu in Samoa. I'm also aware that in Samoa, Savea Si'uleo has been known to be the name of that guardian. In Tonga, Havea Hikuleo. Coming back to Havea and Hikuleo, you know, you mentioned that in terms of a more ancient story around the name. So that's what I know of in terms of pulotu. That's the place of the spirit realm.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, you know, obviously from where we come from, pulotu is the spirit world, and it's to the west. And you shared that in Samoa, it's the westernmost point.
Yeah.
It's tied there, and
for Ngā Puhi, it's north.
Yes, and for us, the spirit world is quote unquote the spirit world, right? Like we don't believe that pulotu is, or at least from our perspective here on the podcast, pulotu is not a quote unquote place. It's a representative of a spirit world. When you go to pulotu, you're probably not coming back. Yeah. Right? Like that's when you go on your journey. And it's to the west because that's where the sun sets. Right? So it's a spiritual representative. And actually in Tonga, there's multiple places called pulotu, and there's two types of pulotu according to Tongan oral history. There's pulotu aka aka meaning disturbed, and then there's pulotu tu'uma'u, which means calm, which is whenever you go to pulotu, depending on your behavior and the choices that you made, you're either going to go to the pulotu that is calm and peaceful, or you're going to go to the pulotu that is tumultuous. So kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. One thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, Sonny, and it just popped up. And Masi, please jump in. I'm getting excited. And we'll probably just go for maybe another 30 minutes. I want to be respectful of your time, Sonny. One of the guests that we had, his name is Xiaoxi Ilayu, and he's had an opportunity to travel throughout Polynesia and kind of have those conversations with people, get those oral stories. One of the stories that I thought was fascinating that he shared was the story behind Talakai Faiki and the rebellion, because he was the Tuitonga at the time. Yeah. He says that even some, and he says these are some of the oral histories even within Samoa, and it was and then he says he found other evidence looking at the names that were happening around Talakai Faiki's time. It wasn't a ruling class. Well, I guess it's kind of a ruling class versus a slave class. What he really pushed was a religious change.
Oh.
That's what he kind of shared, and what Xiao Ilayu was sharing was Tangaloa at the time. Tangaloa was the god, and obviously with a lot of the relationship that Samoa has with Tangaloa, and obviously out of Tonga as well, that when Talakai Faiki was obviously he was being very ruthless, but one of the things behind it was he was trying to say, no, we need to go back to Hikuleo. We need to go back to the old god, right? And then Havea Hikuleo, and he showed that if you notice, ever since Talakai Faiki came, Havea became a name. Hikuleo, some of the names, even in Tonga, started to shift and was referencing further back to Hikuleo. And that's where really a lot of that tension came from. Have you heard any of that in any of your conversations or anything of that sort?
No, so I've not heard that, but I really like that. That sounds like very. It could have been very, very possible. I'll be keen to when I catch up with them. I'm hoping to catch up with them soon. I'll be keen to explore that more. Then that sounds like a really good reason to have a war, to have a divide. Yeah.
Yes, and it's quite interesting because we did do an episode. And this is why it's important to have these little conversations. The stories may not always agree, but there's always little nuggets. We did a response because, controversial or not, we'll just share it with you. We're not having a debate. We're just sharing ideas. We take a position on the podcast because we were one people and we were all under the governance of the Tuitonga from our perspective, that we don't take the position that the Tongans took over Samoa for 400 years. We take more the position was we were always united as a people, but there was about 400 years maybe of very poor leadership. We'll call it that. Maybe very poor leadership that led to this instability, right? Because like you said, no one likes to be treated unfairly. No one likes to have a foot on their neck. And what I wanted to share was, from our perspective, what happened was, and this is going to be a question to you maybe, we take the position that Tuna and Fata and the Maria Toa and that whole situation wasn't really a war, and we've tried to find information on it, but it was more of a scuffle. It was a battle. It was a battle, but not necessarily a war. And that's why Talakai Faiki says it's not that he was kicked out of Samoa. It was the Samoans were telling him, we don't like how you're treating us. Like, this is not appropriate, right? You're breaking the social contract between leadership and the people. And that's what drove the situation there. And I find it interesting. I want to hear your perspective on that. But also, I find it interesting that a lot of the oral history that we have found online, that Tuna and Fata, and I guess an uncle of theirs, I can't remember the name right now,
nephew,
there were a nephew, there were some like miraculous events that happened where Talakai Faiki said, you know what, there's this giant boulder. If you guys don't move this giant boulder, which apparently was impossible to move, I'm either going to kill you or punish you. And to me, some miracle would always happen, which to me kind of points back to, this is like a religious challenge. If you believe Tangaloa is your God, then make this impossible feat happen, if that makes sense. But what's kind of your thought on that position? Is there more evidence that it was a full-blown battle that lasted many years, or is it one singular battle between Tuna Fata and Talakai Faiki, and kind of the historical stories of some of the miraculous events that happened leading up to the battle with Talakai Faiki? If that makes sense. I'm just asking for thoughts and comments there.
Yeah. No, so the stories that I've heard around that battle was that It wasn't over many years, or it could have been, but it was a very decisive and short-lived battle. Like it wasn't Tuna and Fatsa's parents, and it wasn't their kids that carried the battle on. Like it was with Tuna and Fatsa, and it ended with Tuna and Fatsa. So it wasn't a generational battle in that regard. So and there are a lot of place names around Samoa that talk about the how certain battles happened. One of the villages, I think Malaila, is named after the Tongans that were killed there. They were scalped and then put out in the sun, out to dry out in the sun. Malai La, and so some of the place names, village names around the Upolu was to talk about that battle. And so it seemed like it was a war. It seemed like it was the whole island, all of Upolu and all of Savaii took part in the battle. But I don't think it was done. I don't think it was really, really short, because it sounds like Julian Fata started the rebellion in Upolu, and then Savaii caught on that Julian Fata end up in Savaii, so that when Tuikana Kupolu shouts back to Julian Fata, they're no longer in Upolu, they're in Savaii, hearing the Tuikana Kupolu talk about that. So it sounds like it was over a bit of time, but not too long. But it sounds like all of Upolu and Savaii were involved in the battle. There's a whole bunch of stories that add to it, but it's one of those.
Okay.
This is how we tell the story, knowing full well that the Tongans will probably tell it differently. Yeah.
No, understood. Let me ask you this. I noticed this is the second time. I didn't bring it up the first time, but I noticed that you mentioned Tuikan Kupolu both times for Talakai Faiki. What's the driver behind that thinking?
Well, as a title, whereas I believe his name was Talafai Kaiti, but his title was Tuikana Kupolu, because he preferred kano, kakano, or kupolu, the upolu flesh for his wives.
Okay.
So that's my understanding. Yeah. So it was a title that he had, but his name was Talafai Kaiti.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because from our perspective, he was a Tuitonga. The Tuikan Kupolu doesn't get installed so maybe that's where the name Tuikan Kupolu originally comes from, if that was a title he liked to use in Ha'amoa. But in Tonga, what I find very interesting from our old history, and this is why we don't really take the position that it was a full-blown war and repulsion, because our oral history actually says that the Tuitonga, I think 3 generations after Talakai Faiki, they live in Samoa for about 5 generations.
Right.
And so it's kind of interesting, and that's why we take the position that Talakai Faiki says, "Hey, I'm coming back. It's not that I'm not coming back. I'm coming back, but I won't be coming back to war," because he actually respected what happened, right? Like it's almost like he was saying, "Well, why didn't you guys stand up for yourselves sooner?" Right? Like it kind of, that's the way it kind of comes across. But yeah, interesting, because I noticed you kept mentioning Tuikan Kupolu, which is kind of doesn't quite align. But maybe if you're saying you're taking the position of that was a title he liked to use in Ha'amoa, that could be something that could be going on there. Mr. Atero, any questions, comments?
Maybe we've talked too much and left. Sorry, go for it.
No, it's fine. No, hey, it's fine. It's all good. Sonny, I just had some other questions too, because when I was in Upolu, if you have any, there's this place called, I think they call it Sainga. They kind of use it more now, but
right,
which is
you had to go there.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And then some of the oral history that I've heard, that Saina, which is called, it's supposed to be Saina, because apparently that village was a place of residence for the Tuitonga, and there was no Fa'alubenga, which Fa'alubenga is very common for all the titles in the other villages. But they said just of recent, because of how they do protocols, they've kind of merged Saina to Fareata, I believe, in Upolu, to kind of when they do their Fa'alubenga stuff, when they do their cultural events. But in the time, there was no Fa'alupenga for that area because that was a residence for the Tuitonga, and Saina means it was tapu to go and walk in that area when the Tuitonga was there. I don't know if you had any other stories, and this is just part of the stories that I'm just adding to what Tualau kind of shared with after the scuffle that happened with Tuna and Fata and Talagay Faiki, that we did the Tuitongas or the yeah, you say the Tuitongas came back and they were still, you know, mingling and still like I said, Samoa was like driving to Hamilton. It was almost like a very constant traveling to Upolu and Savai. But I just know,
Yeah.
I wanted your thoughts on that place on Saina or Saina or however you say it. But what you are you? Am I hearing the right oral history from what that's been told, or what are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, it's funny because I didn't want to go down that road. I was happy
if you
just
don't want
keep
to,
it
that's
here.
fine.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, you're right. You're fine.
Only
You're
because
fine.
I was going to talk more about it. So,
You're fine.
so this is
You're fine.
the. Can you see that? Oh, can I? How do I unmirror?
No, I can see it. It's fine. It's
Okay.
Fa'alai Ngofiena, something like that.
So this is the Tusi Fa'alupenga
Fa'alupenga o Samoa.
of the villages of
Okay.
Samoa. Yeah. And this is where is it? Sainga, the Fa'alupenga for Sainga.
Yes.
So I'll read it out to you.
Yeah.
Afio mai, which is how you address the high chiefs. Afio mai, alo ole Tuitonga, the son of Tuitonga.
Tuitonga.
Faletaungu. Maliu mai lo'olua to'alua. Maliu mai refers to the orators. So welcome your two orators, Lawati and Motuapua'a.
Motupuaka. Lawaki and Motuapuaka.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the final line, Maliu mai mamalu, again referring to the orator, Sa ta'alawa. So one of your other two
Takalawa.
is the Takalawa. Yeah. So that's the Fa'alupenga for Sainga, the village of Sainga.
Yeah.
And so it mentions when you talk about oral traditions, in the honorifics, in the way you address people from Sainga, which is exactly what you're saying, the original name doesn't mean China. It references where one of the bases of the Tuitonga. So it references the Tuitonga, references Faletaunga, references Lawaki, Motupuaka, or Motuapua'a, and Ta'alawa. So in Samoa, Sa is the lineage of, or the house of. So Sa Ta'alawa is the same as Ha'a Ta'alawa. So Ha'apai is the Ha'a of Apai, which is, comes back to Manono, Sa Apai. So Sa and Ha'a. So in New Zealand, Ngati Poro refers to the lineage of Puro. Ngā Puhi refers to the lineage of Puhi. And it's the same in the Cook Islands. The Ngati Tangi Ia refers to the lineage of one of the kings, Tangi Ia, Ngati Uenuku. And so they seem to have, the Ngati Tangi Ia and the Ngati Uenuku, based in Rarotonga, they seem to have their lineages directly back to Savai'i as well. And so here, in the Kusi Fa'alupenga that you mentioned, Tuitonga and the Sa Ta'alawa, and I was thinking, I don't want to add, if it's already the Tuikanaku Polu in the Tuitonga, and so I was thinking, I don't want to talk about.
No. I'm glad you brought that up.
But now you mentioned.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because really, what that, from our perspective, that's actually very important information, because it gives a certain timeline, from my perspective, to that. What is it called? The Fa'alupenga.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting is it doesn't directly name the Tuitonga in that. It says Koialo, or it says the son of the Tuitonga, and then it names the Tuihatakalaua, which is many generations. That to me gives a timeline, because the Tuihatakalaua is installed by Ka'ulufonua Fekai, and he is actually the one that, when we said the Tuitonga leaves Tonga, it's Ka'ulufonua Fekai, because he installs the Tuihatakalaua. Then he goes to where we say Ha'amoa. from our perspective, when we hear Samoa, we say Ha'amoa, which is the clan or the family of Moa.
Right.
Yes. And so to me, this Fa'alupenga has a timestamp on it from my perspective, because it states that Tu'i Hatakalaua, which to me would make sense from my perspective, obviously, that when the Tu'i Tonga goes to Ha'amoa to reside, which he resides from, like I said, for about 300 years, about 5 Tu'i Tongas, their main residence is in Ha'amoa, from our perspective. And that Fa'alupenga seems to match that timeline, because it's referencing the Tu'i Hatakalaua. And we have kind of discussed it, is a lot of the Western perspective is, the Tu'i Hatakalaua took over from the Tu'i Tonga, and the Tu'i Kanukupolu took over from the Tu'i Hatakalaua. But we, from the Tongan perspective, is no. The history that we've heard and discussed with multiple people is I think there were 3, maybe 4 Tu'i Tongas that go through assassinations. And they go through assassinations, about 3 of them in a row. And actually, the term Takalaua is the name of the last Tu'i Tonga that was assassinated. That is Ka'ulufonua Fekai's father. So he finds out, and the oral history that we got from Siausi Ilayu is, and we have this marked to talk about the story about this assassination. The reason why Takalaua was assassinated is our brothers and sisters from Uvea and Futuna. The Tu'i Tonga before Takalaua, their mother was from Uvea. And he gets assassinated, and the people from Uvea, they blame Takalaua. They say, Takalaua, you assassinated our Tu'i Tonga that had Uvean blood. And so that's why when they chase the assassins, they chase them to Ha'amoa, they chase them to Fiji, Tuvalu, Tokelau. Ka'ulufonua, he gets Fekai because of what he does to the assassins. He catches the assassins in Uvea. So when he comes up to Uvea, he tells the people in Uvea, you better give up the assassins. If not, I'm going to return to Tonga. And this is kind of like the same perspective I take with Tuna and Fata. Obviously, I understand we have different positions, Sonny. We're just sharing the ideas here. If Talakai Faiki, the reason why he says, I won't come back for war, is because in our perspective, the Tu'i Tonga Empire, he can pull resources from Fiji, from Tongatapu, from Ha'apai, from Vava'u. If he says we have a problem, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get resources. We're going to come back. But what he tells the Marietoa is, no, actually, I'm impressed, right? This is impressive. And he says, when I come back, it'll be as a friend. We're not going to have war. Because what Ka'ulufonua Fekai in our oral history tells the Uveans is, you will deliver them up to me, because I know you guys are closer to them. You guys have the probability of defending the assassins. If you don't, then I'm not going to say I'll come back as your friend. I'll be coming back with canoes and canoes and canoes filled with warriors, and we're going to have a problem. So what does Uvea? They have no option, really. So they deliver back the assassins to Ka'ulufonua. He brings them back, does some very not so nice things to earn the name Ka'ulufonua Fekai. Then he installs the Tu'i Hatakalaua, and then he goes to Ha'amoa, and they stay in Ha'amoa until Tapu'osi. Tapu'osi decides to come back to Tonga after that. But I do find it interesting in that Fa'alupenga, to me, when I listen to it and I just think about it, and this is not scientific, it's just a gut feeling, and listening to it is that Fa'alupenga has a timestamp. And that timestamp, in my opinion, seems to fit when the Tu'i Tonga moves to Ha'amoa, because they're not mentioning Tu'i Tonga after Tu'i Tonga. They specifically insert
Alo,
which is the sun, right? And then they're also mentioning the Tu'i Hatakalaua, which could be whenever the Tu'i Hatakalaua is coming to Ha'amoa to report to the Tu'i Tonga. That could have been the area where they're coming to report, and maybe that's where that Fa'alupenga comes up. I mean, those are just my thoughts on that. Mr. Aotearoa, anything?
No, I'm good. I was just curious about that question, and I was just wanting to hear Sunny's thoughts about China, because that's what I've kind of heard with that oral history with China, with that particular area.
Yeah.
So, no.
Okay,
that's
cool.
good.
Looking at the time,
Yeah.
we can always come back again, Sonny. But I want to close out with this because I think this is a way to kind of tie together all of our discussions, talking about our people as we are dispersed around the globe, as we come with our old oral history, our experiences, and we're sharing it around the digital kava bowl and the kava circle here. I just want to loop it up to what we as a people bring to the world. And I know we're a very small group when you look at Polynesia and you look at the big world of billions of people. But
Almost
we
8
always
billion.
have 8 billion, and yet
Yeah.
we have a unusually large influence over the world.
Yeah.
Right? Like you look at what the Rock's doing, you look at it, we wanted to talk a little bit about the chief of war, which I think is going to open up a whole new opportunity because of the hard work of not just our brothers and sisters in Hawaii, but the talent that's been developed in Aotearoa to help facilitate the quality of the product. But I really wanted to kind of really reemphasize, as a people, as a united people with a common heritage, a common history, social, religious, and scientific origins, that we don't give that away to absorb Western ideas and philosophies and wholesale do that, because we will lose what makes us us.
Yeah.
The Westerners, they're good at being Westerners because they're Westerners. We need to be able to say we're good at being Polynesians because we're the only Polynesians. That's the unique thing we bring to the world. So because I'm living in Vegas now, I get, obviously, the algorithm works towards to give me, stuff about Vegas. And I thought that this could be a good closing video because this is a foodie, obviously a foodie here in Vegas. And he talks about what makes Vegas special in his eyes. And Vegas has a lot of things, right? It's the entertainment capital of the world. But I would like us to close our closing thoughts, and we'll go with Mr. Aotearoa, then myself and Sonny. We'll give you the closing opportunity to close for us. But kind of take this into account, what he says, not just about the food, because the food's fantastic, but what he says, what makes Vegas special.
I told you there was a food truck in Vegas doing garlic shrimp the same way you get it on the North Shore in Oahu. What if I told you it might be even better? Polynesians and Hawaiians are what make Vegas special. It's what makes us the ninth island. So it's an honor to introduce you guys to Kilakine, the shrimp truck. People line up every day for this shrimp truck, and it's usually parked by the Deep Roots Dispo over on Blue Diamond. The menu is real simple. You can get lemon butter garlic, garlic scampi, hot and spicy, or the kalena, which is the lemon butter plus the hot and spicy. All plates include 2 scoops of rice, a half pound of shrimp, and mac salad.
We'll play the whole thing, but that first part is what I'm really interested in.
All right, I want one of everything on the menu, plus an extra order of that mac salad. Okay. We also have crazy-ass fruit refreshers filled with lilikoi and pineapples and coconut. All right, we got one of everything on the menu. Let's go home and try it for y'all.
Perfect.
Right,
we'll pause it with that. But I thought that was kind of interesting that here we have an American living in the entertainment capital of the world, and what he says makes Vegas special. But Mr. Aotearoa, we'll go to you, then we'll come to me, and then we'll finish with Sonny to close us out.
Hey man, like I said, I'm always amazed, especially in America. You got 300 million people, and you know the percentage of Polynesians is 0.01. Putting it into percent, and it blows my mind the amount of influence. Like you get this guy who's probably never left the mainland of the United States, but the amount of influence of Polynesians are having, it blows my mind, and I hope people appreciate what we can do, and don't that always aim high, think highly of yourselves, and value what the ancestors did, and we can do it if we put our mind into it. You just got to put in the work and not be afraid of work. You know, enjoy everybody's contribution. A special thank you to you, Sonny Natanielu, for your time. And like I started in Samoan with the Felua Inga, I just want to do like my malo ya te oe Sonny Natanielu e maua le loto toa ma le loto tele e mawhai ona au whaatasi mai mātou mo nei afiafi nei asosa whaftai ya oe ma whaasoe ina lo manatu e tu sai ma le tala whaasoe pito tātou tangata le Pasifika ai ia toi whaatumuina mea ua whaangauina ona maua nei ia whamanuia ia te oe ma lo inga ia e manuia i le numanai ia lau tala lea malo soifua ia.
Thank you.
Malo, Masi, once again, Sonny, want to say thank you. Well, appreciate your time, your willingness to engage. Like you said, from our conversation here, I take it that you're someone who lives what you speak because you're here. And we appreciate that because it is in engaging. It is in being willing to engage that change can happen, that knowledge can be shared. Want to really appreciate all of our viewers and our listeners. Appreciate all the kava bags that were thrown in. That was shared, the questions, the comments. As always, we have viewers that aren't as polite as we would like them to be, but that's the way the world goes, right? We embrace the whole bag. When the kava gets too much, some people need to go to bed early. But really appreciate it and really grateful to the viewers. And Sonny, give the chance to close us out before we give Masi will share what we invite everyone at the end of every episode. But Sonny, close us out with your final thoughts.
Whamalo whekalai whaaloaro lau sunga Masi. Was the kanyangi fisanga le malu lo fofonga lafo. Thank you for your kind words there. And thank you for honoring me with the Samoa as well. Thank you both for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts, as scandalous and as controversial as it will be. I think the thing that I think Pacific people bring to the world comes back to our history as tangata moana, people of the ocean. You know, over the course of history, for hundreds and thousands of years, all of the people, land-based people, are fighting over land. Meanwhile, we occupy the ocean. And the people of the land, they put all their technology and innovation into housing and palisades and fortresses. And our thinking and technology goes into creating va'a that can turn the massive ocean into highways that connects all the islands. And this is where what's his name? Epeli Ha'ofua talks about, you know, the immensity of the ocean, and that's our home.
Ocean of islands, yeah.
And so when you think from an ocean-based perspective, the way you see the world is significantly different to the way land-based people see the world. So when Captain Cook comes out into the Pacific 250 years ago, he sees a people whose voyaging vessels outperform his by miles. Not only are our voyaging vessels bigger than his, but they're also faster than his. And you know, the Endeavour design, the tall ship design, has got 3 or 4 masts and about 50 million sails. We've only got 2 masts and 2 giant sails. And so Captain Cook is shocked when our with the Tahitian war canoe outperforms his one. And the thing is, we shouldn't be surprised because that's our domain, our innovation, our way of thinking, our way of connecting to the world is from that perspective. And so, you know, in Samoa, we call about tausileva, in Tonga, tauhivaha'a. And so we understand that concept today as the way we protect and nurture the relationships between one another. But when you're out in the middle of the ocean, you must also tausileva with the wind, with the waves, with the stars, the moon, the birds, the dolphins, the whales, the sharks. And so our way of connecting to the world is multidimensionally, but the people on land don't think of it in the way we think of our connections are. And so when you realize that you come from that background, There's no wonder why we're doing so well in rugby, in league, in boxing, in the fighting arts, in academia. Tonga is the most lawyered nation in the world per capita. Now, also, I understand Tonga is the most qualified. There are more people with degrees in Tonga per capita than anywhere else in the world. So even in academia and in the corporate world, we are making ourselves known there. We are now even in opera. You look at the amazing things that Pulemelei and some of these the up and coming Tongan opera stars are getting into. And so I'm not surprised we are doing so well, because the way we understand who we are, the way we connect to one another, and the way we connect to the world is what sets us apart. So the more, especially the people in the diaspora, the more you embrace that, the more you embrace your differentness, the more you embrace how different we are, and the way we connect to one another and the way we connect to the world, including the spirit realm, is what sets us apart, and why we do so well. Navigating the ocean is very, very similar to navigating, the modern world. And once you understand, for us, we have our navigating stars, our principal navigating stars. We have our ways of connecting to the wind, the ways, metaphor for navigating government, navigating policies, navigating justice, education. And so once you learn to draw from that wisdom, you realize how well we can navigate, so that we are achieving all these amazing things that we're currently achieving for such a small percentage wise. In Samoa, I'll close with this. In Samoa, one of the motifs that I have on my tatau is the achua loa, the poisonous centipede. And even though it's the giant centipede, it's only about this size, but as small as it is, it can still knock down a person. Once it bites you, you are down and out. And so we have the saying, "Elaikiki ai ma'ingi." It's small, but it stings. And that's kind of us as the Pacific people. As Masi said, we are 0.000000001% of the world. But elaikiki ai ma'ingi, we are making ourselves known. And to me, the more we draw back, the more we draw on ancient wisdom and bring it into this modern context, the more you will see how much we can give to the world, and especially as people who are servants, who understand servanthood, who understand service. When we start to come into that space, especially when you add in tech, the whole tech realm, watch out, we get a hold of that with the way we understand the world. So I encourage the brothers and the sisters in the diaspora, find ways to connect, find ways to learn about your bones, who you are, where you come from, and then find ways to enact that where you are, that then you will figure out how to be you in the modern world. So again, Masi and Chua, thank you so much for the work that you do. Bless you with the work that you do. May it continue to succeed and continue to draw our people together and draw the knowledges out that we can then start to pick and choose from, where we will stand on that spectrum. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Mahalo. Thank you. Well, that's the end of this live digital cover session, everyone, on the Polynesianized podcast. The three things we always leave with everyone is be bold, stay curious, and ask the hard question. Alofa atu, ofa atu. Take care, everyone.
Malo. Peace.